Hey guys, this is Michael Derrick with Champions Concessions, Treats and Eats, and we're here today to talk with Josh and Lisa and kind of find out about the struggles and the things that they've gone through and what God has done in their lives. And so, I guess, guys, I don't know who wants to start, but I think we're going to talk about Grace today. So
Gracelyn is currently 10 years old, and she was diagnosed at 7.5 months old with a rare genetic disorder called schizencephaly. They don't know for sure it's genetic. They say it is, but they don't know, so it's kind of complicated. But she was told at 7.5 months old, we were told that she would never walk, talk, she'd be on a feeding tube, she'd basically be a vegetable. By 9 months old, we were told by the hospitals and the therapy centers to basically institutionalize her. Being that she was adopted, that was a valid, never gonna happen, did not matter what it was gonna take at home for us. And the last 10 years have been nothing but, I guess you could say, trials of just trying to figure out how to make life work for her. 1 month it's one thing, next month another thing, next week it could be another thing. So it's like we just kind of go with the flow, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to add on to that, that 10 years, our focus was on Gracelyn. She was the one that we had to kind of overcome obstacles for. We had to figure out, okay, what's the best treatment plan? And so one thing, kind of piggybacking off of what Lisa was saying, our move for Texas into Colorado was purely on trying to find the right set of tools to help her be as successful as possible. We were told here, it's like, hey, there's nothing really for her. We're just, like Lisa was saying, institutionalize her. That's the best thing for her to get help. And we just didn't want to hear that. We didn't feel that that was truly the right direction for her. We didn't feel that that was the right answer, and we're neither one of us are we're going to give up and just, okay, whatever.
And some of that comes out of our journey through adoption that we had with her, because it was very a clear picture that she was meant to be in our home. We went through the adoption process. It took us 6 months, which is abnormal, and we did an interstate adoption, so that kind of brings into the story too, because we had a placement and we walked that placement out for 2.5 months bonding with a mom and had a fail adopt. And 25 days after spending all that money, 25 days later, we had a placement with her. We walked out in that placement with 0 travel money. 0. We had our adoption fees, we had no travel money. Josh was like, I have enough gas money in our vehicle to get us to Texas. From Texas to Utah, how are we gonna deal with this? And I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna put a feeler out there and see if anybody can find us housing. And we were very lucky because someone who didn't even know us just opened up a condo for us to stay at for the whole entire time. Totally just like, we were blessed in ways I can't even explain in that process, but it was only God, because things like that don't fall in your lap unless God's got something big for you.
Yeah,
Right.
very
So
true.
when they told us institutionalized, we were like, that's not God's plan.
Yeah.
There can't be that. That cannot be for what God has handed to us.
Yeah, and Amy had told me a little bit about things that were happening and about Gracelyn's situation. And so when I saw all 4 of you guys just walking in here, I was like, wow, okay, so it's not like what Amy said, where she's in a wheelchair and all this other. And the doctors were definitely wrong, saying that she was going to be on a feeding tube and just laying in a bed.
We do have a feeding tube, I will say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do have a feeding tube, and she does use a wheelchair part-time. Some days are worse than others. Some weeks we don't even walk, she barely walks on her own, and then other days, like, she's doing great. And then she'll have a seizure and it sets her way back. Or she'll have a seizure and it doesn't set her back. So that's where it's hard, because where do you sit on a diagnosis when you have so many unknowns? She has skin conditions, she has, I can name it. And they're all rare. They're all rare. Not one of them is not rare.
Then you've got a very unique child.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's very true.
And that's the thing, so many times people don't realize that parents with a child with unique abilities, also has all these unique challenges that are completely unrelated, and yet they all kind of fall together to be part of your normal.
Yeah,
Right. And
very
our
true.
normal is like, and I can only talk for myself, but from the wife's perspective, what's hard is 1 year, in 1 year, we had in just copays and deductibles and co-deductibles, we had accumulated $75,000 in just deductibles. That was not, and copays, that was not asking for like some big thing. So at that end of that year, we had to sit down and say, how are we paying this off?
Yeah.
Because we have to get this paid off. We can't live this way.
Right.
And he owned his own business, ran as much of his own business as he could on the side, ran a worked for a corporate business. He Ubered and did Grubhub. And I mean, like, God provided. I did a job on the side I could do from home and literally provided in a year for us to pay off $75,000. That does not happen without God.
No,
It
no.
just doesn't happen, and that is part of our journey, that every time we run into a hurdle, we have to say, she needs a new wheelchair. They're not paying for this part. Okay, we have to fundraise again. Is God going to provide? Do we trust? Do we say it? Do we really believe it?
Yeah.
You know, and like right now, that's where we're at, because we're yet on another journey of like trying to figure out, where do we get $6,000 for a jogger stroller slash bike trailer that converts both ways to make that reality for her.
Right.
You know.
Now, I remember Amy was telling me about this wheelchair that would be, you know, the jogger, stroller, you know, bike conversion, and all that. I know she had told me there was some medical reasons that, you know, you have that you need it, and I'm assuming that, you know, Medicaid, Medicare, insurance companies, none of them will even take that into account.
No, and they don't take that into account. We actually are currently trying to get her a manual chair, on top of getting her something that when on her really bad days we can use for her. And currently it's not working. They're like, well, we're going to try to get her a manual chair, but we can't promise that.
Yeah,
Right.
our big thing is we don't want to isolate. We would try to be as inclusive as possible. Every member of the family, you know, has the ability to participate. But the challenges that we have to come into place is that, you know, yeah, we can start off really, really well, but she fatigues or anything along those lines, someone's having to hang back. You know, someone doesn't get to enjoy the moments that we're trying to create and
Or
everything.
we're about to walk out the door and she has a seizure. Well, we're all about to go for a bike ride. What do we do?
Yeah.
I mean, now suddenly somebody's left behind again. Or we want to go on a hike that's can do a jogging stroller, and she can't go because it's just too terrain for her with her braces or with her muscle strain that day. Like, it adds up, and it affects our oldest as much as it affects the two of us.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Our oldest gets affected just the same way that we get affected when the emotional side sits and we're all in that rev of like, great, we're gonna get to go do something, and then it doesn't work.
Yep.
So like, for me as a parent, I feel like people need to understand that it's like taking somebody and putting them on a roller coaster at the very top and it dying. That's how it feels.
Well, at least it's
And
better
then
than
you've got
dying
to
in the
walk
loop.
back down into the and then you've got to walk back down in the valley and say, oh, I didn't get to enjoy that journey that was going to be that so heart-revving, like, exciting moment.
Yeah.
It was like a door slammed in your face. You got stuck to somebody pounded you to the ground. I mean, there's so many ways you can feel when something just totally goes wrong. And as a family we've made a huge decision to move out of a home that did not work for our child, move into an RV that works for her, and she thrives in it. So when we go places, she needs to keep thriving,
Right.
not just be shut off to the world.
Right.
And that's one of the things that, you know, every parent, whether you've got, you know, an atypical, you know, child that, you know, has normal abilities and normal restrictions, and then you have a family that has, you know, these extra restrictions on what all you can do. You don't want to live in restriction. You know, you don't want to be restricted. You know, and as a dad, I'm sure you've heard from so many people how rare it is that you stuck around, and how rare it is that, you know, you ran your own business, you worked for someone else, you did the Uber, you did, you know, all of this stuff and paid off all of this debt, you know, and most dads would have bailed. You know, I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah, I've gotten that. I get all the time, you know, it's like, how do you do this? How are you standing upright right now? I mean, it's only through just faith and just believing in God that he's the one who's truly holding the burden. I'm just utilizing the tools that he's giving me to the best of my capacity to endure through, you know, the journey in that moment at that time. And that's been a struggle. I mean, you know, I see the benefit of it, but I also see like, man, it's like over the course of just our 15 years of our marriage and everything, you know, I've probably have gone through multiple jobs just trying to find the right one that fit me, but that was still conducive to, you know, our family and our environment and everything else like that. And that's hard. That's really challenging because, you know, right before we left Colorado, that was one of my biggest challenges I feel that I've had from a working standpoint, because I had to come home multiple times and handle and help and do everything else, which is not good at all for your career.
Well, I mean, I honestly think that the job before we had in Colorado was impacted by Grace's bilateral foot surgery. Mm-hmm. She had a plate put in her knee and a bilateral reconstruction of both feet. And the option was, do you do them simultaneously or do you do them separately? Well, for us, that would have been 12 weeks if we had done them separately. 6 weeks if we did them together.
Right.
But I couldn't lift her. Right. So what happens?
Yeah.
I mean, we had a nurse and she was like, I need help lifting her because she's already too much for me to just uplift with. And so he had to be home, because if he wasn't home and the nurse couldn't pick her up and I couldn't pick her up together, who was going to pick her up and change her? Mm-hmm. Who's going to make sure she has what she needs? I mean, she was still incontinent at that time. It was still a very important thing for us to make sure that every need was taken care of. Like the nurse and I can do her diaper changes if somebody can move her, you know, like if, like, it was just one thing, like getting her in the car to take her to an appointment. It was like, I needed him. I couldn't take and put her in the car. And then, you know, it takes a special car seat for her because of her autism on top of her diagnosis of schizencephaly. And so then we're talking about, she has epilepsy. So then if she falls in the car because she has epilepsy and she's got a regular car seat, she's sitting like this. And so it's
a ton to keep up with.
It is.
It's like one thing after another all day. And people used to say to me, oh, you need to get sleep. I'm like, what sleep? That doesn't exist. Like, it doesn't exist. It's not.
The sad thing is, most of the time us dads, because we have a job outside, we get a little bit more sleep than mom, you know.
Oh, no, way more sleep. Trust me, way more.
I was trying to be nice.
Yeah.
No, we sleep and they don't. And they sleep whenever the kids decide to
slow
go to
down.
sleep for
Right,
a little while.
happens,
and honestly, I think as a wife, people need to understand that we're mean because we don't get sleep. And you guys get the blunt of it, which is not fair.
Yeah.
But that's why marriages don't work. Mm-hmm. Unless they like take it to God and say, okay, God, this woman is being a complete bear. This man is being a complete, like, because the woman's going to say the man's being this way even though they're just tired. Mm-hmm. And so if they don't take it to God every time they turn around, like what do we have to lay on a table of cards? It's just a bunch of like aces. It's not what 52 that we're supposed to be picking up and playing with.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Very true.
All right, guys, this conversation is just way too good. We're going to go ahead and cut it off here for just a little bit, and we'll start another episode. And we want you guys to join us next week for the next episode, continuing this conversation about Graceland, because, guys, it's just incredible.